I'm not gonna lie,
Yeah.
I eat a lot of meat. I like a lot of meat. It's just one of those things for me.
So
And again, I'll watch it. People will be like, "Oh, how can you watch it?" And that. This doesn't impact me that much.
Yeah.
Now what are these? It doesn't.
These are chickens.
I've been watching it. Even the baby chicks going through the process, and like it was just fucking packets of noodles. But I don't. It just doesn't hit me.
Regardless of like how much it I know I can see it bothers you more, it bothers you less, right? Would you agree that killing unnecessarily, there's an ethical issue with killing unnecessarily? And this is the thing, is that I agree with you 100%, where if my life depends on it, I will kill anyone, like human or non-human, in self-defense or for food or whatever, right? Do we need to, and this is the tricky question, is do we need to kill animals to be happy or to be healthy?
You laugh now. One of the most common questions I get personally is, Ryuji, how do I remain calm when I'm talking to people about veganism? How do I remain calm when I'm having outreach conversations? People just say these stupid things and it just triggers me. How do I remain calm? And this is exactly what we're gonna talk about today. For you personally, like everything that we told you just now, like, do you think it's like fucked up?
To be honest, yeah. But it's life, which kind of sucks.
Well, it kind of sucks, but do you think that you can do something about it?
Me personally, yeah. You can preach what you guys are doing about it.
Well, what could you do personally?
What could I do personally? I could not eat or drink what's being produced, but I like it. So.
Well, here's the question, right? Because the thing is that all these products, every time you eat like a burger or like a milkshake or whatever it is that you eat, that comes from tremendous suffering. And real animals actually have to suffer and die for that. So the question is, do you think that your pleasure of eating that food should come at the expense of the suffering of an innocent animal?
No.
My name is Ryuji. I'm here with Alex Bez from Amazing Vegan Outreach. And he has dedicated his life to supporting activists and people just like you become the best outreachers that they can be. His background is in sales, and what he's done is he's brought his background to vegan outreach and to having effective conversations with people. See, I believe that activism is always about what is the result that you're creating. If we're gonna have a conversation with someone, we should focus on having a conversation that's actually gonna change that person, not a conversation that just feels good. It's not for us that we're having the conversation. Ultimately, it's for the animals, and we wanna do what's gonna be best for them. And that's exactly what Alex teaches. You can check him out at Amazing Vegan Outreach. Everywhere he teaches workshops around the world, 2-day workshops that goes in depth into all these topics. But what we're gonna talk about today is specifically the topic of how to not get frustrated. And the way we're gonna break it down is, first we're gonna talk about what frustrates us. We're gonna talk about, second, why that frustrates us. And thirdly, we're gonna talk about how to avoid that frustration. So Alex, when people say they get frustrated, because he just told me the stat that when he does his workshops, he has people separated in the room, and he told me that after speaking to over 600 activists, about 80 to 90% of them say that they feel frustrated regularly while talking about veganism and animal rights. So what do you think it is that frustrates people?
It's a good question. That's a good question. I think what frustrates most people is not being able to get their point across, not be heard or understood by other people, right? So when I'm trying to communicate the idea of not hurting other living beings, and people aren't able to accept that simple message, and for what we know is make like simple little choices, different choices, and they're not willing to do that, it's frustrating, right? I think that's what's frustrating, that you're not heard, you're not understood when having this conversation, right?
Yeah, I definitely understand, because one of the phrases that I get sometimes is people say, I get what you're saying. And I'm sure you get that too, and I definitely understand how that can feel, because people say like, oh, I get what you're saying, but in your mind you're like, no, you clearly don't get what I'm saying.
Or even if they understand what you're saying, it doesn't motivate them to action, right? And that's the key, is when you're outreaching, like you're saying, the conversation is not for you, it's for the other person. So you want the other person to actually take action after that, and when they don't, when they're not willing to, when they give you excuses for not taking action, that's where I think people get frustrated. It's like, why did we talk for 10 minutes or 15 minutes about this if this person's not going to go and actually do something differently?
And so going deeper, why do you think this happens? Because one thing that we just talked about before the video is how people sometimes come to me and they're like, Ryuji, how are you so patient? And in my mind, I'm like, Well, it's not really that I'm patient, it's just that I just don't get triggered. Because what I think people mean when they say, hey, I'm patient, I'm sure you get this too. Alex,
Yeah.
how are you so patient when you talk to people?
Yeah.
Is they're like, how do you feel all that anger? Because people will tell me this too.
Yeah.
They'll be
Yeah,
like,
true.
you know, I'm sure you're screaming inside.
Yeah.
So how do you remain calm while you're screaming
Yeah,
inside?
that's a good point.
And I'm like, no, I'm just not screaming inside. I just don't get triggered.
Yeah, that's a really good way. That's a good insight, I think, because I forget that people don't all feel like I feel.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just the ability to stay calm, and I think that starts with the attitude that you go into the conversation with. So if you're going into a conversation, you know, trying to intellectually educate somebody, right? Or logically educate someone. The problem is that people don't want to admit that they're wrong, that they've been living their entire life wrong, right? So when you go in there with a different attitude where you want to coach them, and that's what I teach is a coaching approach to outreach, it's a lot of helping them explore their own personal values, you know, helping them explore their own ideas of what veganism is, or what it could be for them. And I think that when people get frustrated, it's because that conversation, if you don't have the right approach to that conversation, or even the right mindset going into it, then it can devolve into like some argument or some debate, which is, it's been proven that it's unproductive, right?
Right. And I
Debates?
think,
Go
yeah,
ahead, go ahead.
No, and I think it's really important what you're bringing up, because you're talking about being empathetic to where the other person is coming from. We have to like take that into consideration, because what I think we have to understand is that when we get frustrated, most likely the other person is getting frustrated as well.
Totally.
Because from their perspective, you know, like you said, they've been doing this thing their whole lives, and we have to understand that as human beings, we like to double down on our investments.
Yeah.
You know, for example, like a simple example of this is, for example, most people, if they buy a movie ticket and halfway through the movie sucks, they'll still sit through the entire movie. Because
I'm one of those people.
Because they've invested that
Yeah,
first
true.
hour in the movie, so you're like, well, I'm not gonna give this away now. Like, I'm gonna double down. That's why people stay in toxic relationships. I mean, it's part of it, and it's why people stay in like bad businesses or businesses that don't go well. I mean, I've seen this in friends. I've seen this in people being in relationships, and you see this in people who've invested their entire lives. I mean, like, imagine your entire life you invest in this idea that you have to eat animal products, that it's the normal thing to do. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, when someone comes and they're like, actually, that's not true, it can be very triggering. And I think, especially for people like parents, for example, imagine like your kid comes up to you and tells you that you're wrong. At that point, they're not even just saying that you're wrong for what you're doing, they're telling you, hey, like, you're wrong for the way that you raised me. Yeah. And so we have to understand that that can be very triggering and frustrating for the other person as well. So, like you said, I think it's important for us to be empathetic to that and really come from a place, like you said, like coaching to them and not preaching.
Yeah. Here's the way that I kind of, my philosophy, or the way that I look at humanity in general. And this wasn't the way when I first became vegan. So when I first went vegan, and I became aware of all the pain and suffering that we cause to non-human animals, I was like mad. I was frustrated. I was disappointed in myself and humanity. And I kind of went through this phase where I was kind of angry at people, you know, and I don't think I was practicing what I'm preaching right now.
And by the way, I think we all go through it. It's like, I went through this,
normal.
and I know so many people have gone through this, so it's like it's completely normal.
What I realized is that I think that in general, humans, the great majority, 99%, are not bad people. They're also not stupid. We are inherently weak as a species. We don't act rationally. We don't think, well, we might think rationally, but we definitely don't act rationally. That goes for me and you too.
Yeah, of course.
We don't always do the things that best suit our own values or our own goals. And so when I realized that, when I connected that to this topic, which is a super sensitive topic for people, right? This kind of goes to a core component of their morality, of their ethics. When I connected that, then I realized, okay, people aren't bad. They're also not stupid, even though they say silly things sometimes. Their defenses make them say that. But they're just weak. So if I can take that approach, we say, okay, look, I understand that when this person, when they say a silly argument, or when they say that they don't care sometimes, I know that might just be a defense mechanism. And if I don't allow myself to get triggered, I can do a more effective job of coaching that person to get past that defense that they're putting up, right? So that's kind of the general idea that I go into these conversations with. It's like a helping and a coaching approach, it's not an educational approach. That's not the approach I take. I'm not there to teach people stuff. Socrates said, I can't teach anybody anything, I can only make them think. And that's literally the approach I take, is that people believe what they say, not what they hear, right? So if I'm there just trying to educate them, it's gonna go in one ear and out the other ear, you know? If they're the ones that are coming up with their own values, they're consciously recognizing their own values, and then
thinking about, well, what can I do to align my actions to those values? But they're the ones that are coming up with that. Not only is that conversation so much more interesting for them, not only are their defenses much lower because they're the ones that are doing more of the talking, they're also way more likely to go and do what they came up with, right? So that's the idea behind, maybe, I don't know if we're kind of going into other sections of this.
I love this because what you're saying too, I think is really important because it goes into the wider conversation, in my opinion, of the mindset that we have as we enter those conversations and as we go through life in general. Because the way that I like to think about what you just said is I think about it in terms of being collaborative as opposed to competitive.
Totally. Wow.
And you can very easily see where people are coming from when activists talk to me and they say things like, there's so many people who are not going to listen. There's so many people who are this, who are that. The world is never going to change and things like that. And you can see that inherently they're coming from a competitive place. Not just, by the way, when they're going into that specific outreach conversation, but that's probably the frame that those people are approaching life through.
Yeah.
And so to me, the way that, many of these problems, like, say like, to go macro for a second, how to not get triggered. It's not really about how to not get triggered in this particular situation. For me, I think about how can I just outgrow this problem? How can I become the type of person who's not gonna get triggered? Not just in this situation, but just in any situation.
Yeah.
And part of that, for example, is seeing the world as a collaborative place where we're all here together as opposed to competitive, which is, by the way, also, in my opinion, the nature of our whole movement. Like the point of veganism is to create unity. It's something that is collaborative. And so to me, it's important that we always have that mindset, not just in these situations. And what I found is that when I approach life in general through a collaborative frame, then in my outreach situations, I'm gonna be collaborative as well.
If I can top up on that too.
Of course.
Another thing that I've always learned, like a long time ago, was it's like an expression that goes, hope for the best, but expect the worst, And it's like expectations that create stress in our lives, right? And it's even expectations from these conversations. So although I hope for the best, and I do get a lot of really positive conversations happening, there's sometimes when they're not. They're horrible, and they could be frustrating, but I already expect that to happen, right? So when you know that that's a possibility, and then you're just playing, like coming from a sales background, you're just playing percentages, right? So a certain percentage of your conversations are not going to be good, no matter how. You could be the best outreacher in the world, they're not going to go well. So that's one percentage, right? Your other percentage are going to go okay, and then another percentage are going to be amazing. They're going to go vegan on the spot, or they're going to want to do the challenge, So all you're trying to do is move your percentages like this way, right? Make sure that you're having more positive ones and less negative ones. You'll never eliminate the bad ones, so accept them. When they come, be like, oh yeah, that's one of the negative ones, and that's it, right? And when I say negative, it's just challenging. Maybe I don't have the skills as a coach. Maybe even if I did, I couldn't get through them. I don't know. I don't really worry about why I wasn't able to get through, but I do analyze myself. So I record myself. I'll either have an audio recording if I just want to review it for myself, or I'll have people filming me, and then I can watch it and I can say, like, oh yeah, I could have done that better. That doesn't mean that I'm putting unnecessary pressure on myself. It just means that I'm constantly trying to improve to give my positive percentages more of a chance.
Right.
That's all it is.
And what you're saying, I think, is so key. It combines two different elements, which I think are really critical. And one of them is understanding that outreach is a skill like any other skill.
Yeah.
That's exactly what you teach, actually.
Yeah.
Which is that anyone can learn how to be good at outreach.
Yeah. I don't believe that good salespeople are born, by the way. Like,
right.
There's that question, like, are good salespeople, or replace it with outreachers. Are good outreachers born, or are they made? I believe they're 100% made. Do we have some natural, traits or abilities that might help us? Sure. But no amount of natural talent will trump actually investing time into learning and practicing certain skills.
Yeah. And so the first part is, understanding that you can always get better at this. If you apply yourself, if you consult resources like, say, check out what Alex is doing and learn from him, there's so many different, I learned from many different backgrounds. So by the way.
What I teach is not mine. I didn't create any of the content. It's stuff that I've learned over the last 20 years. So I've taken what I've liked, what's been effective for me in my professional career, and then shared it with people here. And it works, I think, as good as it can. I don't know.
Right, exactly. Because for me, for example, I know you have worked in sales for a long time. For me, I've studied things like marketing, business, branding. I try to understand psychology, sociology. I study these things to inform my outreach. So you can always get better at this. And the other part that Alex was just talking about was not being attached to the outcome.
Yeah.
Because the moment that you're attached to the outcome, that's when you can so easily get frustrated, because you're not always going to get the outcome that you're going to have, and you're going to get frustrated. Now, I understand the distinction that in our case, unlike in sales, when you're doing sales, you accept that a certain percentage of your sales conversations are not going to go well. You're not going to close. That's fine, because nothing happens. You just don't make that sale, and then the ones that you do make the sale, they make up for them. So it's easy to accept that. In our case, when a conversation doesn't go well, there are victims involved.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of it too. But what I really believe is that, yes, this is a social justice movement. Yes, there are victims involved. We still cannot ignore the universal laws of how communication works. So for example, one thing that's just true is that you're not going to get along with everyone. Not everyone is going to listen to you, and you can't control how people are going to react to you. Maybe you're talking to someone, but perhaps they are an open person, but maybe they're having a bad day. You just have no idea what's going on in their lives. So that being the case, you can't control that 100% of the time. So, yes, there are victims involved, but we always have to accept it, at least in my opinion, that, like you said, a percentage of our conversations is just not going to go well, quote unquote.
Yeah, I agree. And I think we're doing ourselves and the animals and the movement a disservice if we don't recognize that, like you said earlier on, this conversation is not about you, right? It's not about you feeling good. It's not about you, spending a couple hours on the street talking about animal rights. Like, okay, but so what? Like, if you're not able to, inspire change in people, you're gonna get frustrated, you're gonna burn out. Like, literally for me, cubes, conversations are the most rewarding thing that I do, and I know for some people they're the most frustrating.
Right.
So I want to see people getting into the realm of like, I love doing outreach because it fills me up, and then I can go out and do other hard things like bearing witness or watching Dominion and suffering through that, but knowing that, okay, I can pick myself back up because I can go see the good in people when I have effective outreach conversations.
Wow, that's actually incredible what you just said, because that is also something that people come to me with, where they're like, I just went to a cube, but I don't know if I'll go next time because it was so frustrating. And and it's interesting because me, like you, I love going to cubes, and typically when I leave a cube, I'll always feel way better than
I feel pumped. I feel like energized.
Yeah, and because I'm like, wow, people are so open today.
Sorry to interrupt. When I feel like crap and I don't want to go to the cube. There are times where I'm at home, or wherever I'm on the road, and I'm like, the last thing I want to do right now is go out into like the cold and go to the cube, and I'll go, I'll force myself to go, and as soon as outreach starts, I'm like, I'm like, I love it. And at the end of the cube, I feel energized again. So, the one thing I can say, and it's so funny how much what you're saying mirrors sales. New salespeople, so many new salespeople quit. Why? Because they have frustrating conversations to start. They get a ton of no's to start because they're just learning how to communicate with people, and so they quit. But the people that that's one of the traits that you can learn from sales is just perseverance. Is just keep going and keep trying and don't give up and just tweak what you're doing. If something doesn't work, don't blame humanity, don't blame other people, because there are things that work. There are communication skills that work. So if something's not working for you, including for myself, I'll analyze it and I'll try and fix it and I'll try new things. I'll go out there and I'll have 20 more conversations with this new angle and see if that works. And if it doesn't work, then I'll modify that, right? But there is science behind it. It's not this only a few people on YouTube are good at talking to people. I don't believe that at all. I don't believe that for a second. You can upskill, you can train yourself 100%.
Yeah, and so from what I gather, and you've told me this just before I saw the video, is that one of the things that allows you to feel this way, to have this attitude where you come out of a cube and you just feel great, is the fact that you're confident in what you're doing, the fact that you're competent. So what are a few things that you could say that people could implement right now to gain a little bit of confidence so they can start on that journey of, going out and having conversations and not just being overly frustrated?
Sure. So one is find a strategy for whatever goal you're trying to achieve, right? This doesn't just go for outreach. This goes for anything you want to do in life, right? You have a goal. Now let's zoom back into what we're doing. We want to veganize people. So let's pick a strategy that helps us meet that goal as best as possible, right? So for me, that means finding the communication strategy or framework that's best going to accomplish me being able to veganize people. So you have to figure out what that is. Obviously for me, I believe from my experience, it's the framework that I teach through Amazing Vegan Outreach. But watch some of those videos, come to a workshop. If you like it, great, implement it. If you don't, go find other things. There's some really good sales books out there that you can read that are and first, I also want people to realize too, when I say sales, I know people have a very negative idea of what sales is. So I don't want to get into like the theory and philosophy behind sales, what good sales should be, but good sales should be, thank you, collaborative, right? And so find a framework that works for you where you feel like you're collaborating with this person, learn the skills that are involved in that, and then practice the hell out of them. Because I have 20 years of experience and I still look at myself on video and I can point out so many things that I don't do well. I can also point out a lot of things that I do well. So, it takes practice, and don't be frustrated. Like anything, if you're just learning to play golf or you're learning to play basketball for the first time, you're not gonna make every shot, right? So go out there, make a lot of mistakes, be confident in making mistakes, be confident in knowing what you don't know. One of the most powerful things you can say to someone when someone stumps you or someone asks you something, it's like, that's a really great question. Nobody's ever asked me that. I have no idea. When you have that confidence to say that, you can't be got, So don't be afraid to go out there and make mistakes and try things, and over time, like time will tell.
Yeah, no,
I don't know what I'm saying.
And to go into a couple of mindset things too, and you can tell me if you do this or you have other mindset tricks for yourself. But for me, when I have outreach conversations, because like you said, I always look at myself as well.
Yeah.
I record myself too.
Yeah.
If I don't have video, I'll try to get audio, and I'll review what I did so I can see how I can improve. Which, by the way, I think is really powerful, because when you're in the actual conversation, when you're in your own body, it's very difficult to real-time monitor yourself.
It's impossible. It's impossible.
And like when you see yourself on camera, you'll be like, wow, like you can really see yourself as a third-party kind of person. So that's why I think it's really powerful.
Quick tangent.
Yeah.
You can also, when you say see, so yes, you can hear yourself, right? You want the audio, but you can see what other people see, which is impossible for you in the moment. You don't see your facial expressions, you don't see your body posture, you're completely like almost oblivious to that. And when you watch it back, you're like, oh, that's what people are seeing. Yeah, I'm not smiling enough.
Yeah.
I'll probably watch this video and be like, why aren't you smiling more? I love talking to Ryuji. But it's one of those things where you have to like analyze yourself to get better.
Yeah, and one thing that I used to do for other skills that I've cultivated is I would write some sort of field reports. So I would always look at myself and I think about what I did well and what I didn't do well. But the key that I want to talk about here is that after all that's said and done, for me, I always choose to focus on the positive. Now, like that competitive versus collaborative frame that I talked about earlier, this is not just an outreach. This is just in life in general, where I always choose to focus on the positive. Because what happens is that if you, and by the way, just to go off on the second mindset that I want to talk about, which is I always focus on my own actions, not the reactions I get out of people, because like I said, you can't control that.
Yep.
So for me, a great outreach conversation is not necessarily that, oh, that person went vegan, that's why the conversation is awesome. The conversation is awesome because it's like, yo, like I did a really good job.
I did the best that I could.
I did the best that I could.
Yeah,
That's what makes it good. So focusing on that and focusing on what I did well allows me to become more like that person that does really well at outreach, and it allows me to stay positive and happy as a vegan. Because I swear, there are people, I've been at the same cubes of truth as them, and I come out of it, I'm like, that was really awesome. And they're like, yo, there are people who are like laughing at us, there are people who are doing this, so many people walked by, they didn't care. And we were at the same event. But it's just that what we focus on is so different that we have a completely different experience of it. And like I said, this is not just in the Cuban outreach, this is just in life in general. If you can train yourself, because by the way, I used to be very negative, and I used to focus on negative things all the time. But one day I was like, no more. This has to stop. I can't do this anymore. And I was like, I'm just gonna retrain my brain to focus on the positive. So I would always, when the thought pops in my mind that's gonna be negative, I'll catch myself and I'll change it. And over time, I've trained myself to the point where now, like, when I'm at a cube and people are kind of like laughing at us or like something's happening, like, I don't even notice it. I kind of like, it's kind of there, I kind of see it, and then I just kind of move on and I just completely forget about it.
Oh, even better. I love when people are laughing at us. I love going up and asking them, hey man, what's going on? Like, are you like, do you disagree with what we're doing or something? And like, super positive. And kick off a conversation like, you can't even faze me. And when people realize, especially like people that are trying to bully you a little bit, when they realize that they can't get at you, then they stop trying. That's, so not that happens too often, but but it's like, so what? So what if somebody laughs at me at a cube? Is that gonna ruin my night or my life? No, like I'm not gonna, and even if, anyway, I just.
It's so key because you said that you go up to them and you're like, hey, what's going on?
Hey,
and again, that's coming back to being collaborative with them.
Yeah.
Because our instinct when people are laughing at us is to confront them.
Yeah, so watch this. Hey, what's going on, man? I know it's kind of silly, right? Like all of us people here, like on the street with masks on, it looks weird, right? Yeah, what do you think we're doing? Or let me ask you a question. You're not laughing at the animals being abused on the screen, are you? Right? All of a sudden the conversation changes, but it's a super positive start to it. And like, you know, it's again, you're so right, not being competitive with them because you're not going to win. Or if you do win, then it means they lose, right? It's not about that.
Yeah, you told me something really interesting about debates earlier, which is that apparently studies have shown that when you have a debate with someone, that person is more likely to go away being more convinced of their own point. And I think too, this is a really important conversation to have, because so many times when we see outreach conversations, say on the internet as videos, they're debates a lot of times. Which I'm so grateful that you're talking about this, because I've been thinking about this for a long time about how, well, it's great that we see these debates, they're very entertaining, and seeing them as videos I think is great. But at the same time, like those studies kind of show, those might not be the most effective strategies to have in that moment.
Listen, like most people, I like watching debates. They're interesting, right? This like intellectual battle, and guess what? We always win. Like, let's be real. There's no logical counter argument to veganism, right? So the problem is, we see this and we feel good. We're like, haha, we're right. You know, and like, do we really need more confirmation that we're right? Like, we know we're right. Like, let's be real. Not in an arrogant way. Like, not in an arrogant way, right? But we don't, like, let's get rid of that. We don't need to prove that we're right, right? I want to see people like inspiring other people. I want to see people motivating other people. You know, that's what I want to see out of these conversations personally. That's what, like, really, I'm like, wow. You know, that person walked away saying, I'm gonna go vegan, right? Those to me are like magical. But they happen more often when it's not in a debate format. Far more often when it's more of a collaborative process. So I know. So for the people watching this, like, we're speaking in generalities right now. We probably don't have time to get into specifics of what that means. But again, if I can just like direct people to the AVO resources, so any social media, I have like a really small YouTube channel now, but Amazing Vegan Outreach. I'm going to post more stuff there. The website, amazingveganoutreach.com. There's going to be webinars there probably every 2 weeks. I'm going to try to even go down to one every week on different topics. So really down into like the nitty gritty of these different components of this framework. So feel free to check that out. But again, I'm one person with one idea and one strategy. Take what you like from it, and be curious. Find out how other effective communicators, not necessarily in veganism.
Exactly.
They don't have to be vegan outreachers. Go look at who are the most compelling communicators and coaches, like who can actually inspire action, and copy them and learn from them. That's
And what I think you're saying by if you like it, because I know that it's very easy to sit at home and be like, I like this idea, I like that idea. But one thing that you uncovered earlier that you talked about is, to me, when I say I like an idea, I don't mean that I think about it, it makes me feel good. It means I went out in the world, I tested it, and it worked. It produced the results that I liked. So
good insight.
So I think what you're saying is, for you, don't take everything that Alex says, but go test it out yourself. See what works for you. See what actually creates results. Keep that. If something doesn't create a result, then ditch it. Maybe even let Alex know, be like, I tried this, didn't work, blah, blah, blah. Have a conversation about it, but it should always be action-based and having results in the real world, as opposed to just sitting at home and kind of intellectualizing about it.
And by the way, thank you for beautiful clarification on what liking it means. And if you ever do go out and try anything, my job full-time, I've kind of decided to do this, I'm doing this full-time, is just to help animal rights activists with learning and development, and specifically related to outreach. So I touch on other topics, but that's like my core. So if you guys ever need anything, if you think I can help you, just message me. Like, I'm here. That's what I do. It's what I'm dedicating my time to. So on any social media, Amazing Vegan Outreach, just shoot me a message. If I can help, I'm happy to help.
Cool, awesome. I want to cap off this video, but I want to make a point before that, which is what you were talking about earlier, about how you want to inspire people. Because again, this is going back to mindset. This is going back to like the wider conversation about where we are coming from. Because as human beings, like, we like to kind of see what we already see, and we think that's like the whole world. So if we see a lot of conversations online and they're all like debates, we're like, oh, I guess this is what vegan outreach is about. And what that creates, in my opinion, is that it's very easy to go into conversation with, your goal is to prove someone wrong, and to be like, what you are doing is wrong, or this is what's right. But even doing that in a question format, right? So you can use the Socratic method to prove people wrong, and that's where I think in general, I see people getting the idea that we should be asking questions, but it's not asking questions to prove them wrong, right? It's asking them questions to help them discover and uncover their own values, right?
So I just want to add that in.
Yeah,
there.
no. That's so key, because what you're saying, a way that I like to illustrate it is, if you have like being vegan up here, I think like when we're coming from a place of being competitive or being like, I'm going to prove you wrong, is, hey, you shouldn't do this. Move away from this. Like, this is wrong. You are wrong. But what you're doing is, hey, what's up? Let me inspire you to come up here. Which is, by the way, where people already are, like you said, aligning our message with their values that they already have, making it completely win-win, making it collaborative, where it's like the other person walks away and they don't feel like, oh, you know what, like that person was right, or you know what, I was wrong. They're like, you know what, that's really cool. I do want to try that out. That sounds awesome, because that sounds like something that I would want to do. So, thank you so much for watching this video. We really appreciate it. Hope you learned something. Hope you're inspired. If you want more resources on how to become a better outreacher, definitely check out Alex at Amazing Vegan Outreach. I'll link all his stuff in the description. I also have a pop-up of his face somewhere that you can subscribe to his channel using these YouTube features. If you want me to support you as well, you can message me, Alex, that you can message him. So we're always here to support you. That's kind of why we're here. That's what the community is all about. Anyways, have an incredible rest of your day wherever you are. We'll see you next time, and peace.